Hello.
Hello.
Hey, you bitch, we're back. Oh my god, it's been 3 months. Frankly, it could have been 3 months. So terrible at keeping track of time. But hi everyone, and welcome to Scary Talk. Hi Sunny, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, lots of things going on in my life. Dating this wonderful sweet boy. Yeah, and I have like more weird updates. But how are you?
I am fine, and I'm actually really interested in hearing your weird updates because I know you're dating this wonderful, amazing, spectacular man, but I don't really know a lot about the workings of like the inner workings. So how's it going?
Well, that's going well. Honestly, Andre, he is like so kind. Actually, this is a great thing to discuss because I didn't realize that men like this were a real thing, I was always like,
Really? Didn't you always date like soft boys though?
Well, that's the thing. I dated soft boys, but they were low-key, actually kind of shitty relationship-wise. Like, they weren't good with communication. They were really avoidant. When we had problems, like, it was up to me to try and wrestle them into, like, even talking about it, because they would just prefer to let it fester, which I hate. And to be fair, I've done that too. I mean, it's not, like, inhuman, any of this stuff, but basically just always, like, had little stuff come up, which was fine. I mean, ended relationships, but it happens. And, yeah, so now... Now I'm dating this guy who, to be fair, I was really good friends with for 5 years first. And, yeah, he's just so sweet. And, like, if anything, he treats me so well. I'm like, oh, my God, I need to catch up and, like, buy you flowers or something and, like, not now be the shitter in the relationship, So it feels good. I feel very cherished. And yeah, that's super nice. But my weird update is actually that I had a really weird dream. And normally I wouldn't talk about dreams because when people talk about their dreams, I immediately like check out. But I actually think this is cool. I think this is one that could be like the plot of a movie or book or something. I mean,
was it one of those tentacle porn dreams that people have?
I wish, Andre.
I've had that. It's weird. I mean, it's kind of cool, but
wait,
it's
you
weird,
have?
Yeah.
Okay, shut up. I hate you.
Anyway, continue.
Well, I had this dream that you could watch a horror movie, except you could do it in virtual reality. So basically, you could like hop into a little virtual reality with your friends and like start to see things go wrong in this little virtual world that they pop you into, and it gets creepier, and like your friends get kind of picked off one by one. I mean, it's like random for the group, but I went in with my friends in this dream, and of course, like we all got like picked off by weird things. And if you're ever like too scared and you need to get out, you can like jump into the water, because it's kind of like it's like a Venice type situation. Like you're walking around on the docks of this like seaside town. That was the setting. So the idea is that you can always jump into the water to get out. And so we did it, and they all got picked off, and I was the last one, and I was like terrified, and it like got extra scary, and I jumped in the water, and then we like had done it, and I was like, whoa. And they all wanted to do it again. So we did it a second time, but the second time we did it, everyone got picked off, and it was just me again facing off with like this really weird kind of serial killer guy who like appears from the walls, who's like the kind of like final boss feeling of the whole experience. And when I tried to like jump in the water to get out, I couldn't. And like I just came out of the water and had to keep dealing with it and being there. And I got so like terrified. And then the weirdest part of it is that I just ended up living in this virtual reality in my dream. But I ended up just living there for like 40 years. And when I got really old, like the mastermind who had been playing the serial killer turned out to be like an old friend of mine, which is so weird. It was, yeah, but very dream within a dream vibe. But then it turned out to be like an old friend of mine / mastermind who was just trying to terrorize me, I guess. And they let me out of the dream, and then they let me out of the virtual reality, and then I was back in my regular dream. But I thought it was kind of cool. I was like, someone should pick this up. I don't know.
Wow, that sounds really cool and really stressful. So, did you really feel like you'd lived like 40 years in your dream and then you woke up?
It was more like a time lapse in a movie. Like, it felt like it just kind of skipped, and it was like, oh my god, I've been here 40 years. Like, that's so weird. I've lived out like a whole life here, you know? But no, I didn't fully experience that, thank goodness.
Because that sounds more like the literal nightmare that I've read about in like creepypastas and stuff. Of like I was strapped in my dream for an eternity or something like that.
No,
and then
exactly.
I woke up.
Yeah. No, yeah, but like the cool thing about it is that because I knew it was a virtual reality, it was like knowing that I was in a dream, you know? So I wasn't as scared because I was always like, well, you know, he can terrorize me all he wants, but like I'll eventually get out. Which is so funny because I was in a dream but didn't even realize the dream part, you know? I was like, this is just a virtual reality software or whatever. So it was like terrifying, but not like, oh, like I actually need to get out of here. I'm like really like not feeling good. So luckily it wasn't too scary of a dream. Yeah, because of that weird double dream effect.
Well, I'm glad you made it out alive, and hopefully you learned something about yourself. You know, they do say that dreams are very much an introspective experience. So maybe you can go on like interpretmydream.com and be like, I dreamt of a virtual reality, and they'll tell you, oh, that means your leg is falling off or something.
That means you believe we're living in a simulation.
No, it's always way out there. Like it's really never obvious with dream interpretation. Like, oh, I dreamt that I was being like chased by some guy. Oh, it means you have cancer. Like it's really out there. But I love those websites.
True. It's so true. Yeah, and if we have any writers or anything in our listeners, snap that up. I do not claim any copyrights on it. I would just love to see it made. So let us know.
Oh my god, watch it get made into like a multi-franchise property, and like you're like, yeah, you're cited as saying like years prior, yep, I cite no copyright on that, I hold no copyright on that, and you're fucked. That's why I never express any original ideas ever. That's this whole podcast. It's just me regurgitating Trixie Mattel jokes and funny things I find on like ifunny.com.
What are you talking about this podcast, Andre? That's who I am. I don't have an original thought in this body. I'm not even as an existence an original thought, you know?
Right, and I'm too skinny to like hold so many thoughts in my head. Like they don't fit because I'm so skinny.
No,
and so
exactly, exactly.
Right.
They just float right out the ears. No, I get it.
Okay, so I have some current events that we need to catch up on. Okay. We must. First off, did you hear that Kim Kardashian officially became a billionaire?
I did. I saw that on Instagram.
I had some thoughts about that. Well, my first thought is actually not what you'd expect. My first thought was she was probably jealous of Kylie this whole time, and now she can finally be like, fuck you, Kylie.
Honestly,
now
as the older sister, yeah.
Right.
Like, she would never say it, but she'd be like, I'd better stop buying these Gucci purses and build this wealth a little more so I can hit that landmark, you know?
Precisely. I mean, though, like, you know, Forbes recently came out being like, oh, maybe Kylie lied about being a billionaire when we interviewed her for her Forbes cover story. So maybe she wasn't actually at that time and only became one recently. There was like this whole scandal about how Kylie actually wasn't a billionaire when she said that she had become one. I don't know. But congrats, Queen, I guess. I mean, literally no human needs to have $1 billion, but you do.
Literally.
But, yeah. But I mean, she's also not the worst offender. Obviously, like you have, I mean, the others, right? You have Jeff Bezos, you have Bill Gates, you have there's a couple. There's like a dozen of how many billionaires are there in the world? God,
I don't know. Have you ever done that Jeff Bezos wealth visualizer thing?
No, what is that?
It's really cool. So you should just look up like Jeff Bezos wealth visualized or something, or like visual, and it shows this website and it like shows you like this little tiny dot on your screen is like the amount of money that the average person will make in their lifetime. And then it shows you like if you fill up the whole screen and then continue like scrolling to the right for about 30 minutes, the whole screen filled up, that is like the total amount of wealth that Jeff Bezos has. And it'll like highlight areas. Yeah, it'll be like, so half of the screen, if you were to just donate this amount, could pay for everyone's cancer treatments in the US, you know? Or like this could, or like, you know, he could obviously pay his warehouse workers enough to where they're not having to pee in bottles. Or like give them better breaks, I guess. That's the real thing there is treatment. But
right.
Yeah, he could literally just use like 1% of his wealth to so better the lives of even just the people who work for him. Like not all of America or anything. And he doesn't. He just lets that shit sit, you know?
This is fucking insane. I'm looking at this website and I've been scrolling this whole time that you've been talking, and I'm not even close to finishing.
Oh yeah,
like,
no.
What? Like, who needs this much fucking money?
No one. Yeah.
Literally, what? Like you could live you could live a fucking lavish life with like, I think a couple million if you're like in your 20s now, like, you know, like you
wouldn't
run out
off of the like dividends if you invest that,
right? If you invest them, like, it's insane. What the fuck?
No, it's totally insane.
Yeah, in like a comfortable normal life, you don't even need like maybe like what like maybe in like let's say me right now, right? Like I'm 20 something. Now I want to give them a real age. Like what, less than $1 million, maybe $1 million, and like again investing that, probably less than $1 million, really, if you really think about it. And this guy has like 185 times that, and then times 1,000. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god.
No, it's insane. Humans are just dragons, you know? We're just trying to sit in our little caves on whatever we have.
Listen, I think we've touched on this before, and I think it's really easy to speak when you're not a billionaire. But I would like to think that if I accumulated that much wealth, like, I would still recognize the fact that, like, there's no way I'm spending this in my lifetime unless I want to, like, buy Mars or something from Elon Musk. And so literally I would just like give so much of it away. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do with that much money?
No, exactly. Yeah, I think any like somewhat reasonable person doesn't sit on that. Like the what is it, Jeff Bezos's, I should know her name, was it Samantha? But his ex-wife has already donated like so much of the wealth that she got in their divorce and literally become like a top philanthropist, living the life that he easily could be living, you know? So.
I know, because like you'd get so much like approval from others and like your social circle and like acclaim if you just donated a bunch of that money, and you wouldn't be any poorer for doing so because you'd still have like billions and billions and billions. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But instead, like, he wants everyone to hate him and fear him, and like for him to live alone in his like dollar bill castle, I guess. Like, what kind of a miserable well, here's the thing, probably from our moral compass like point of view, that's a miserable existence. But for all we know, since this guy's most likely a sociopath, right? Because like there's no way for you to get that much wealth unless you're kind of an asshole. Maybe he is having the time of his life, just spending his money on whatever the fuck. I don't know. He go into the Maldives. Who knows? I mean, totally. I think it sounds miserable because like I would just imagine that like no human ever again in his life will ever want him for anything other than his money. But maybe he's a sociopath and he doesn't care at all.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would be behind storming Jeff Bezos' home with a guillotine, which I think some people have already been working on. If I remember, like, either his home or someone else's home, like, people brought a guillotine and were, like, protesting, so...
Right. But for real, though, like, what do you think about that? Like, wouldn't you be afraid that, like, people would only want you for your money if you had, like, even a couple, like, $1 million? Like, that would be an immediate fear for me. Because, like... How can it not be? Like, I feel like it happens all the time. And you hear so many rich people talking about, like... famous people. Because rich people don't really give interviews, but famous people do. Famous people talking about how, like, I can't trust anyone, and you never know if people are approaching you for the right reasons or whatever. That sounds stressful as fuck, to, like, not be able to know if, like, you're actually connecting with this human or they're just taking advantage of you.
That's real. But I also think it just depends on how dependable your money is. Like, if you have some money, but, like, you're unsure of, based on your current spending or whatever, whether you'll still have it in a few years, then I think it's scary, because you could know that, like, oh, these friends wouldn't be friends with me if I didn't have money, and, like, that's at risk. But if you have, like, Jeff Bezos' amount of wealth, I actually think I would be a lot more comfortable, because it would be like, I am never going to run out of wealth. Well, I mean, ideally, I would bring myself to a place where, like, I'm not that wealthy, but in that position, your wealth is so dependable that even if people are just coming to you for that, like, it's always going to be there, so people aren't going to abandon you, I guess.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, the fear isn't a fear of abandonment. It's a fear of never again experiencing genuine human connection.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right.
For people just wanting the wealth and not
Right.
yeah.
And like for example, like, do you think Jeff Bezos will ever again meet a woman who's interested in Jeff Bezos, the man? I don't know that he will. Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he's so insurmountably wealthy that his humanity is lost. He is now just the figure. Like,
Yeah.
like,
That's
right.
real, but I almost feel like you could say the same thing about a lot of things. Like, you could say, what if this person only likes me for my appearance? Or, like, what if this person thinks that I'm funny, so I have to, like, perform for them, but, like, they don't actually like who I am? I feel like that actually plays into a lot of things. Or it's, like, very easy to be insecure that way, of, like, people not liking who you really... Maybe I just, like, have this insecurity already.
No,
But, like,
I completely agree with you what you're saying 100%. It's just that it's way less likely to happen to you by an exponent of, like, 1 billion. Right, that's what I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that happens to your average human, but, like, the chances of happening to Jeff Bezos are, like, you know, to the 1,000th power. And so I just think he's fucked for the rest of his life as far as, like, genuine human connection, and that really sucks. I don't think you're, like, really seeing the gravity of this. That really sucks because in the end, at least in my belief, life is just about, like, human connection. And so if you have $1 trillion but no genuine human connection, I would think you're miserable as a fucking cockroach. So
no, I would agree.
Good luck.
I would agree, but I also think, like me, for example, if I hung out with Jeff Bezos and he just turned out to be, like, a total asshole, he could pay me, like, $1 million an hour, and maybe I would do it for a couple hours, but, like, it would, I mean, I would do it for quite a few hours, but then it would wear off, right? And, like, I think the main thing is that for people who aren't as moved by money, they're not going to be as friendly towards him. So either that, or he'll see people that aren't as friendly towards him initially, realize that they're not moved by the money, and then I guess they'll just be driven by his, like, sparkling personality. I mean, so I think that there are ways to suss out if people are only interested in you for the money, and that he'll be able to tell by the people who really stick around whether they're just there because they want to, like, benefit from him in some way.
I disagree. I disagree, because if someone sticks around, you don't know if they're playing the long game. Like, you don't you don't need to be paying someone and then for them to leave once you stop paying them for you to know that they're fake. They could, like, you know, they could be playing the long game in that they never ask anything from you if you're Jeff Bezos, but they're hoping that, like, maybe they'll get put into your will eventually, or, like, maybe you'll do some kind of business deal with them that will really benefit their company. Like, I just think, girl, more money, more problems. That's all I think. Let's move on.
Fair.
That's
Very fair.
literally my point summarized. So, okay, I was talking about Kim. Anyway, good for her. Now, more Kardashian scandal. Did you hear about Khloe's photo that leaked?
Oh, I saw it. Also on Instagram.
You saw
oh my
it?
god. We're, like, so... Wow, we're on the same wavelength. Let's go.
I know. You're becoming more of a bimbo. I love it. So, yes, I saw Khloe's photo, too. Even though it's the photo she doesn't want us to see. Hello? But I did see it regardless.
She looks fine. She looks so good.
It's just so funny and sad to me that this is happening, right? Because the photo is of, like, a completely normal looking, like, human. Like, she looks totally fine. But because she doesn't look like a fucking cartoon, obviously her body dysmorphia, which, let's be honest, she totally has, is gonna act up. And so her and her team are gonna go into this fucking frenzy, which they did, in order to try to get the photo taken down from the internet. Which, rule number 1 of the internet, once it's on the internet, it's never coming off.
And once it becomes a story that you're trying to take it down, it's really never coming off.
Like, there's literally a sociological term for that. It's called the Streisand effect. So it's gonna happen. And yeah, it did. It spread even more. Everyone on Twitter saw it. So I don't understand how celebrities still don't understand that. If Beyonce couldn't pull off trying to take a picture of the internet, no one can. So anyway. It's so funny to me because she looks so totally fine, and everyone, you know, in her team is freaking the fuck out. But it's also really sad to me because I can tell it's really obvious that the reason, you know, she makes her team, like, freak out over this, and she's freaked out about this photo, is that she has, like, this terrible body dysmorphia. And and obviously she can't stand having a photo of her looking like a normal human being with like, normal weight and stretch marks and texture on her skin. She can't stand that being seen by the public. Which, if you go further into it, I kind of empathize with her, just because I think we did this. I think the public did this, right? I think it's our fault, actually. We created this monster. We called her the fat sister for 10 years nonstop, and compared her to, like, why aren't you as like tight and tiny and tan as your other two sisters? Why are you this like tall, like brutish woman? And of course she internalized that, and now she has this body dysmorphia. This is all amateur psychology, obviously, but I think I'm right. And now this is what's happening. And now, everyone on social media, whenever she posts a picture of her with like a new face or something, everyone's like, Chloe, why do you do this? We all know it's fake, but like, like, we want to have our cake and eat it. We want to like call her an ugly fucking woman and then be like, oh, why are you photoshopping yourself? You're fake. Like, you know what I mean?
No, it's so real. She's very much, I mean, yeah, this example applies in so many cases, but I really do think she's like a product of the system. But there's also an element of, this is where I feel conflicted. I saw the picture, and one of the comments on it was really sweet, and it was this comment like, I actually think you should take this down because she clearly doesn't want it up, and she's really uncomfortable seeing this version of herself out, and she's making the choice to Photoshop and edit her photos, and if that's what she's going to do, and that's the only version of herself she wants out there, then we should respect that. That was a really interesting comment. But there's also, of course, this idea of like, of course there are a bunch of other comments like, and this is why you can't compare yourself to like what you see on Instagram, because everything is touched up. And I felt that conflict a lot, just in terms of she is going to affect so many people, and like her photos, and I mean the whole Kardashian clan's photos affect so many people, and like expectations for bodies. So on the one hand, it's so refreshing to see like, oh no, this is what she actually looks like. Like, I guess we're all human. But, like, do we have that right to see that? Or does she have the right to, like, choose to put out... I mean, I think that she does kind of... At the end of the day, she has the right to choose what photos to put out there. But, yeah, I just found that pretty interesting, too. And I definitely agree with what you said, your amateur psychology armchair theory.
So, I stand by everything that I said, but something that I didn't mention was that my empathy ends at the point where, like... I feel bad for Chloe for everything that I said, but the thing is that, like... in her posts for years, Chloe and the whole Kardashian clan, they advertise, even though a lot of their body, exercise, good for you, queen, but a lot of their bodies were the product of plastic surgery. Even though that's the case, they still advertise a lot of like, shit your pants detox teas and blue pills and shit like this, and they make it sound like that's how I got this body, and that's not even false. That's just fraud. And so they're knowingly doing this, and so that's kind of where my empathy for Chloe ends, right? Because it's like, oh, we should feel bad for her because she's a product of people, being fat phobic, and then wanting to, like I said, have their cake and eat it. But like Chloe also benefited from, well, I guess it's not technically related. It's just that this is happening to her, but she's also done like shitty things regarding like body image, and so I'm conflicted. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, completely. I would agree. It's conflicting. And at the end of the day, as someone who has as much power as her, right? Like they're all multimillionaires. At some point you have to take responsibility for your own image and what you're doing, what you're advertising, what you're claiming in terms of like the whole, oh, we haven't had plastic surgery.
Right.
It's the lies for me. It's the lies for me.
I saw a comment on her. I saw a comment on the photo that said, "Hi, fatty." I'm sorry. It's just like, it was so. That was a whole comment, and I just like had to laugh because I was like, that is so mean, but like so simple. that literally was like middle school like bullying, and I was just like,
no, exactly, so exactly, and also she like doesn't even look. Yeah, they're just so bitter.
But I had to laugh. I had to laugh because I actually knew where that came from. I don't know if I'm gonna send this to you right now. I don't know if you've ever seen. Just watch what I sent you.
Okay. We'll just take this pause for me to watch this.
Yeah, I'll take this pause.
Wait, what? What is this?
That's Demi Lovato
I
saying
know.
hi, fatty.
Why did she say that? Why did she say this? What?
So I think, okay, so hi, fatty actually comes from a meme, right, of Demi Lovato saying that on camera, and people, like, I've just taken it, and that's become a meme. Apparently, like, the original video, it's, like, her, like, on, like, the early 2010s, doing some kind of, like, early streaming, early form of streaming, and someone, like, she was, like, doing shout outs for her fans, and I guess someone asked her to, I'm guessing, to say hi to Fatty, but they probably spelled it to make it sound like, you know how people, like, spell names that are like, oh, testicles
Oh, yeah.
or whatever?
Yeah.
Like
they
that.
spelled it like FADY or something, and she was like,
And someone probably, like, asked her to give a shout out, was like, say hi to Fatty. And she had to say it. Say hi, Fatty. And that's the video. Everyone needs to go check that out. Just look up Demi Lovato Hi Fatty on YouTube. And anyway, someone
wait, that's
said,
actually so funny. Oh, that's
That
way
is so
funnier.
funny.
But someone said it.
Yeah, and so anyway, someone said Hi Fatty to Khloe Kardashian. I just laughed. Oh my god, I'm so mean. Okay, so that's happening. And finally, dude, did you hear that Disney and Universal are reopening? Disneyland and Universal Studios are reopening.
Oh my god, shut up.
They are, and you know I am a theme park guy, so
Yes.
I am excited. I'm excited.
That's so hype.
Yeah, I am actually going to be going to Universal one of the first days that they open. I will not say when because I don't want my fans to ambush me, but I will be there pretty soon after they open, and I feel good about it. You know, I recently got my first shot of the vaccine, which isn't 2 shots. You know, I'm not fully inoculated, but it is something that makes it feel a little bit safer, and also
Absolutely.
like. I think they're closing all of they're keeping a lot of their indoor rides closed, and also obviously they're what is it? They're like limiting capacity to like way lower than usual, and so I feel fine going, and I want to go. So
Yeah, that also sounds nice. Like, hopefully the lines aren't as bad and stuff.
hopefully, yeah.
I was also. Are you interested in Disneyland as well?
I am, but I don't have an annual pass for that. Whereas I've had an annual pass for Universal that's been on hold for a whole fucking year, and I want to
my
continue. I want to, go back to
Yeah.
using it. Yeah.
Okay. Hype. Damn.
I know. Anyway, Kyle, welcome to whatever the fuck this is. Now we're finally gonna get into something scary. Today we are talking about 2 different Mexican urban legends that are really, really popular. That is La Llorona and La Pascualita. So that's it. That's what's happening. I am. If you're ready, Sunny, I'm gonna start us off actually this time.
Yes. Yes, please.
With some La Llorona. So this is pretty popular. I feel like a lot of people in the States, because it's really popular in Latin America, but I feel like even a lot of people in the States have heard of it, especially with the Curse of La Llorona movie that came out like 2 years ago, which I saw it. It was shit, but I loved it. So only because the girl that plays Velma in the Scooby-Doo movies was in this movie. What's her name? I don't know, but I like her.
Oh, yes. She
Yeah, I
also
like her
was
face.
in Freaks and Geeks. Oh my god, I
Yes.
need to know her name. She's
I
great.
know.
I love her. I also love her.
Her name is Linda Cardellini.
Yes.
So yeah,
Queen.
Legally Blonde. Hello. Okay, so anyway, so some people know about it, but in case you don't know, what's up? La Llorona is basically this really popular Latin American legend. The technical origin of it, it's still debated. Most people agree it's Mexican, and so that's why we're putting it in this episode as a Mexican urban legend. And basically, the legend goes that there was once usually refers to like sometime in the early 1800s, but there was once this beautiful woman named Maria who married a rich ranchero, and a ranchero is like a rich ranger. Someone who owns a ranch, with whom she bears 2 children. One day, Maria sees her husband with another woman, and in a fit of blind rage, she drowns their children in a river, which she immediately regrets. And after this, after she immediately regrets it, she cries out her famous phrase, right, which is "Ay, mis hijos," which means "all my children," and like when like Mexican folk are telling the story, that's always like the central spooky point of the story. That's the thing that she always chants. She always chants "Ay, mis hijos," and allegedly, if you hear that, you're fucked because like she's right behind you or she's about to get you, and so you need to run away. That's like her very very famous phrase. And in some versions of the story, Maria is sometimes said to have drowned herself afterwards. Some other versions say that she just like died a natural death, but regardless of how she died, the point is that once she dies, according to legend, she arrives at heaven's gates, but she's denied entry and then banished back to purgatory on earth until she can find her lost children. And so she basically roams the earth in this like white spooky gown, because of course she's wearing a white spooky gown, and she roams the earth. Well, by earth, really, she only roams Mexico and like parts of Latin America, crying "Ay, mis hijos" in an effort to kind of find her children, and she allegedly roams mostly around vast bodies of water, so that's where she can often be seen. Yeah, La Llorona technically translates to the weeping woman, which makes sense, and that's like the basic legend. So thoughts so far?
It's just I like that she has a catchphrase. Did you hear this growing up?
Listen, dude, branding 10 out of 10. Okay, like
honestly,
her marketing strategy is on point.
Yes.
Yes, I did hear. Yeah, the story of La Llorona was like probably the first urban legend every Mexican child hears. So yeah, I've known this forever, and "Ay, mis hijos" is like, yeah, it's like it's in the Mexican zeitgeist. It's just like a phrase everyone knows, and it always relates back to this. People always know what you're talking about. You're talking about La Llorona. So anyway, like, okay. So, I believe in La Llorona, but the problem with La Llorona is that over time she's become like the boogeyman, right? She's far too all-encompassing. She has way too many sightings in places where like she's not supposed to be, which are all probably fake sightings. But the problem is that like, fake or not, all this extra shit makes her just too ubiquitous. Like, the thing I think about a good urban legend is that it is very localized and kind of like niche, and if you go to this one spot, the weird clown is gonna get you. Like, it's far more scary than like, I feel like La Llorona is in every Latin American country everywhere, and it's just too boogeymanish now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Santa Claus. You're like, okay,
yeah, I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, or rather why for a long time it was very hard for me to believe it, but not anymore. I do believe it. It's just that I believe that there was this woman that drowned her children, and that there's like a ghost now that is in some kind of purgatory looking for her children. That makes total sense to me, because even just from like the most like normal stance on ghosts, like like most ghost people or ghost hunters will tell you like all a ghost is either like someone who couldn't pass for some reason, which in this case it would make total sense that she didn't pass because she killed her fucking kids. There's a lot of trauma there, or a ghost is just the energy of a person playing on a loop that's kind of attached to a place or an object, right? So they're either the spirit of a person who can't pass, or the spirit did pass, but there was so much trauma with their passing that trauma literally takes on a visible form, and it plays on a loop. I don't know if you ever heard the story of, it's a very famous story, like somewhere in Virginia or something, of like this woman that was murdered, and she was murdered after like she was hitchhiking and she was murdered. Very terrible with this because I don't have the details, but basically it's like a very famous urban legend around somewhere in Virginia that like if you go to the place where this woman was allegedly murdered, or not allegedly, she was murdered, that there's a shit ton of people that claim sightings of this woman just like jogging. She was murdered that like the morning that she was killed, because she was like jogging she was like jogging along the road, and at some point she like asked for a ride somewhere, so she started hitchhiking, and I'm guessing a hitchhiker killed her. But the point is that this person died, and there are people that like tell stories now that are like, we were driving by there and we saw this hitchhiker, and they wanted a ride and we said no, and then we found out that this was the person that died here. Like, we saw a picture of her, or yeah, we saw this person like jogging and we asked her for directions and we realized that's the woman who was killed there like 20 years ago. So that's only one of many stories around places, all around the world.
I really like that description though you said of like their energy on repeat. That's really interesting.
Right. So that example of that woman that I just gave, I wouldn't call that a spirit. I would say La Llorona is a spirit, most likely. Just, well, yeah. Well, even if she's not, I know that there are spirits out there, right? Or I believe that. I don't think that example of that woman is a spirit, though. I think that's the other thing I said. I think that's just like the energy of her trapped in a loop, like becoming a visual like thing. Is so fucking bizarre.
That's really interesting. I like that description. That's spooky.
Yeah, because she doesn't look spooky, and she doesn't seem, according to people who witness this, aware that she's dead or gonna die, or she's just like a woman jogging and or hitchhiking.
She's
and
just
she looks totally normal.
Yeah,
I know. And so to me, I feel like spirits usually, if they know that they're dead, or if they don't know, at the very least they, I don't know, well, at least this is like Hollywood's representation of it, but they look like when they were killed, right? Like they have the wound, they have the and right, and so this wouldn't apply to that.
That's really interesting. There's also, I just remembered with the description of La Llorona, there's a big Shutter Island parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Shutter Island. Okay, well, spoiler alert, stop
you
now.
You love this movie.
Yeah, I really did. But spoiler alert now, but at the end of the movie, Teddy, the main character, realizes that his wife had killed their kids in the backyard because she was, I think she was like schizophrenic or something and didn't realize what she was doing, but she had killed their children, and when he went there, he was like so angry, and there's this weird scene of her like asking him to kill her basically, and he killed her. And he ended up going crazy and being in this asylum. But that's really interesting. This, like, I think that fits so well for an extra tragic story, because we think of mothers as the epitome of course, like protection and nurturing and everything else. So the idea of like a mother killing her kids, I think, is very salient for like a story, and as a tragedy.
Yep. What's the kind of murder called? Paternicide, I think.
Oh,
maybe. I know matricide is when you kill your mom. That what you just said just now about like that being such a weird thing because it feels so unnatural to our cultural standards.
Infanticide?
No, that's when you kill like a baby.
Yeah.
What you were talking about just now reminded me of the Menendez brothers case, which I will not go into at all because I'm actually planning on us covering it at some point. Of basically these two kids who killed their parents, and that's also such like an unnatural thing, right? Because in our culture it's all about like, oh, you have to honor your parents. Yeah, very unnatural types of killings. Not that any kind of killing is like natural, but some of them are more expected than others, like those kind of really unnatural types of murders are always really shocking, precisely because of what you said, because the cultural norm is like, what the fuck? Like, it's really freaked out by that.
Yeah, so that's why it like sticks in your memory. Throw back to high school psych, when things are unusual, or they stick out in your memory more.
Precisely. Which is like kind of a weird, completely like side note, but I think that's why like Corona year has felt like one big blob of nothing. It's actually felt, I thought it was gonna feel really long, quarantine, but it's actually felt kind of short in a way. I think it's because all the days melt together because nothing interesting happens, and so nothing sticks out in your mind. And so all the days, like if I've that I've spent like the past number of months, just all feel like one long day. And anyway, I think it relates to what you were saying somehow.
Very real. Maybe you'll wake up and realize that you just lived a life, in your dream.
Honestly, I wouldn't even be mad. But so I have a La Llorona story that I want to read.
Mm.
I found a number of them, and I debated whether I wanted to read ones that I found in the ghost stories, or paranormal, or no sleep subreddits.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I
Mm.
know no sleep is fake, but I'm just drawn to it. Kind of like how La Llorona is drawn to bodies of water. So here we go. My mother's family is Hispanic, and we have a wonderful. This story is just called La Llorona. It's on the No Sleep subreddit by a user whose name I can't read. And it's high fatty. My mother's family is Hispanic, and we have wonderful family reunions every summer. One of these times, my cousin made a lovely trivia game that had several questions about my grandmother and her siblings. It was all very fun, and I enjoyed learning things about my great aunts and uncles, but one of the questions struck me as odd. When she was young, she had a pet chicken that would speak to her. I thought this was a little strange, but the game went on. My mother happened to be the one to answer that question, so I asked her about it later in the day. I asked about the chicken, and my mother told me that my great aunt did indeed have a chicken that she would speak to, and it would speak to her. I laughed a bit about it, but I could tell that my mom was serious. My grandmother was sitting nearby and chimed in. She told me that my great aunt had always been very sensitive to certain things. My grandmother never doubted that my aunt was talking to the chicken, but she was unsure of who was talking to my aunt. At this point, I was very intrigued and had a small case of the heebie-jeebies. Then my grandmother told me a story that made my blood run cold in the middle of an outdoor July picnic. She asked me if I knew the legend of La Llorona. It was unfamiliar to me, so a tale was told. There is a legend of a... Well, they basically go and describe how, La Llorona, and then she drowned her children, and then blah, blah, blah. The legend was often used as a cautionary tale to warn the children not to stay out at night or to play near water alone. La Llorona would take them away. I loved the tale, but wasn't quite sure what it had to do with the chicken. My grandmother stated that sometimes when you attract spirits, you are born with the ability to perceive them. I was perplexed, but she went on with the story. She said that when they were children, they lived near water. My aunt, who spoke to the chicken, was only an infant. My great-grandmother had laid my aunt in her crib, which happened to be near a window that faced the water. After a little while, my aunt began to cry. My great-grandmother walked into the nursery and froze. A black figure was reaching through the window and reaching for my aunt. My great-grandmother, being a devout Catholic, began invoking the name of Christ. The figure recoiled from my aunt and out of the window. My great-grandmother watched the entity walk along the wall and recede into the water. La Llorona had tried to take my aunt.
Whoa. That description was so good.
I know. I mean, like I said, I think most no sleep stories are fake, but like frankly, this sounds like a lot of like true testimonials that people give about La Llorona. So really, it's not that far off. Yeah, and like I mean she basically tries to take children. So really, this depiction isn't far off, right? If she actually is real and does that, which I think she does. So spooky.
Yeah, that was so good. That like the receding into the wall too. Ooh.
Also, when the story mentions like this black figure reaching into the crib to take the baby, that totally reminded me of Maleficent, though. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie, like the remake, but at one point, like Maleficent is like looking at Aurora's crib and she's like talking to her. I don't know, and she's on all black. Reminded me of that, but whatever.
We love Angelina Jolie's cheekbones in that.
We do. Spooky Yuki. So that's what I have for La Llorona for now. What you got?
Okay. Well, I have another La Llorona story that I can read, but I actually think I'll talk about La Pascualita first. Okay. So I'll read some background and we can discuss our thoughts. But La Pascualita originally came from a bridal shop in Chihuahua, Mexico. And the idea is that in 1930, so now 90 years ago, this is a real shop. So this shop, La Popular, the woman who owned it was Pascuala Esparza, and she had a daughter who was going to get married. And her daughter, instead of getting married on her wedding day, was bit by a black widow and died. And Pascuala, so distraught at her daughter's death, the legend goes used her body as a mannequin in her shop, which is on clear display. La Pascualita is like on display at the shop at the very front. And the reason why people think that it's her daughter, at first I was like, okay, like, I mean, I still don't believe in it, but at first I was especially like, how would a mannequin possibly be a dead body? You know, it's been 90 years. No embalming is going to let something last that long. But when you look at the mannequin, it is really creepy, especially a couple of features. Like, when you look at the hands of the mannequin, like, usually mannequins just have the smoothed out hands, you know? This mannequin has, like, nails, there's wrinkles at all the places you would expect. Like, it just looks like a real hand, like a fully real hand. And apparently there are, like, varicose veins on, like, her legs. And her face, I think, is actually, like, the least realistic part, but her face still, like, has very human features, and, like, her makeup done, and instead of being a mannequin, it's really more like a life-size doll that is wearing a wedding dress. But now this place attracts a lot of visitors, and there are, of course, a lot of stories from folks saying they've like turned around for a second, and then when they turned back, La Pascualita had like changed her position, or that they'd like seen her eyes move looking at them, and things like that. And there's also another possible origin story for her, which is that she was originally just a mannequin, and there's like another one that I thought was kind of cute, that there was a visiting French magician in town who like courted her until she came alive, and that's why she's alive now. You know, I'm a hopeless romantic. I like it. I think it's cute.
Does that technically count as necrophilia?
You know, if it's not a dead body, if it's just a mannequin, there's got to be a different word for it, you know?
I guess you're right. Yeah.
But that's the story, and yeah, just like what I mentioned, if you should look up, if anything, I would recommend to viewers to look up a photo of La Pascualita's hands. It's just weird, and I remember seeing a comment that even looked like, and you can see that they've like maybe decayed just a little bit, like it does, yeah. So it's a weird feeling looking at her, and I did more research too on. We can talk about. I just did some more research on like why it is that dolls can be so creepy and stuff. We've talked a little bit about it, but what are your thoughts so far, Andre?
I don't think La Pascualita is real either. But the thing is that there is a way for it to be real, right? So, like, I also heard about this story growing up in Mexico. Not as much as Llorona, but I did know, like, the basics. And, like, something that people would always say when retelling this story is the fact that, like, most people think it's not real. I think a lot of locals think it is real, but most people don't think it's real. But the thing is that a corpse theoretically could stay in such a pristine condition, right? So the environment would have to be like perfect, basically, and your embalming would have to be, you know, fucking great, like awesome embalming, and there would need to be a lot of like constant maintenance work for you to keep the body that way. But it can be done. So
really, for 90 years? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, like there's I don't know if you ever heard of what's the name? Lady something mummy. She's like this mummy of this Asian woman. It's fucking like 2,000 years old, and it looks like, I mean, like her skin still has color, right? I mean, fuck, she has skin, period. So like you can mummify something. The thing though with that is that we don't know what the hell they use. Like we still don't know what liquid they use to embalm this mummy, but the point is that, like, obviously, you know, this ancient civilization was able to do it, so it is possible. If they could do it, why couldn't we do it? You know, if they could do it for 2,000 years, why couldn't we do it for 90 years? So it is possible. It's just that just like with other weird cases where like people this weird case of this man who like fell in love with this young woman, and when the young woman died, he like kept her and like was maintaining her body for years and years and years. Like the thing with this is that you're right to an extent, like the body is going to degrade to an extent no matter what. But that's where the maintenance work comes in. But maintenance work, I don't mean just like pumping more embalming fluid into the body, but rather maybe some parts would have to be replaced, right? And maybe that is what is happening to La Pascualita, and so maybe she's real. Like maybe the reason, you know, the rest of her body looks real but her face doesn't is because the face did eventually have to be replaced with like a mannequin face because it was just falling apart. But maybe the rest of the body is still real. So
I actually think that's the most convincing theory, and possibly creepiest one, is that like the face, which does look kind of plastic, maybe just is plastic at this point, but that they've like used body parts and stuff.
Right,
because it is so weirdly realistic. Yeah.
And it has happened many times. There's been creeps. There's like many stories of people who like will keep bodies or exhume them, you know, without the knowledge of the family. Like people, creeps, all kinds of people, necrophiliacs, whatever. And they'll like keep a body, and you know they'll just keep it. And when it starts going really, really bad, they'll just replace some parts so they can still keep it.
That's so weird. Also, like the idea of like a hardcore necrophiliac is like, whoa, something must have really gone funky. Like, I guess no kink shaming, but like kink shaming there.
I was about to say no disrespect to the necrophilia community, but honestly, no, all disrespect to the necrophilia community. I just think that was so funny, that moment, that like that second in my head that I went like, no, wait, what? I just think we're like it's so ingrained in us to be like PC at this point that I was like, no offense to the necrophilia community. But no, bitch. All tea, all offense. Necrophiliacs, what the fuck, dude? Literally, what the fuck? Yeah, ew. Hi, gross. Delete it, gross.
No, completely. Oh, but do you want to hear more on this, like, creepy dolls theory?
No, but anyway, I do, but before, actually, I was bringing up necrophiliacs because I was making a point.
Yes.
I was gonna say, originally, like, no disrespect to necrophiliacs, because I think that most of them, would actually rather have, like, a fresh body in a morgue rather than, like, exhume a corpse. Because, like, I mean, at that point, you know, like, decomposition is really taking its course, especially if it's been a while. So I don't, you know, in order to not misrepresent the poor necrophile community, I just wanted to say I don't think most necrophiles are actually exhuming corpses. I think they're probably just people that work at morgues. Not that everyone at a morgue is a necrophile, but probably necrophiles, if they're going to work somewhere, they're probably going to work in a morgue, is what I'm saying.
Or, you know, maybe they just live with that kink and work office jobs like the rest of us.
I mean, a number of them probably do, right? Because like only so many people, there's only so many morgues. You only need so many morgue employees, like, and there's probably more necrophiles than there are morgue employees or morgue positions. And so you're right.
Are there really more necrophiles than morgue? Man, the idea of there being that many is like wild.
I mean, I don't know, but I assume I'm right just because I feel like people underestimate how many people have a specific kink. I think a lot more people have some level of the necrophilia kink than we would like to think.
Maybe that's why Tim Burton thrives. You know?
Yeah, so that's my hot take on this.
That's the one that you want to go down with the ship for.
Oh my god. Anyway.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. So I was just looking up basically like why are dolls creepy? And we've talked about the Hidden Valley thing, the Uncanny Valley, which comes up a lot, and it's this idea that when things are human, they look human. When things are not human, they look not human. But when we get something that's in between, something like maybe a zombie, something like a doll that's a little too lifelike, it creeps us out. And that's called the Uncanny Valley, which I think, Andre, didn't you say you like don't fully believe in it?
I just think we have not explained it well. I think the theory is more complex than like the mainstream understanding, and I sent you this video about it that I thought explained it really well. There are exceptions to the rule is basically what that video said. And I agree with that. So anyway, continue. I don't think anything you're gonna say is gonna like be an absolute misrepresentation though. Like the theory still has something to it. So continue.
Okay, for sure. Well, what I had read was just it was pretty interesting. It was like a lot about how humans identify faces, because from when we're like really small babies, we identify faces a lot more quickly than a lot of other things. Like your brain is more likely to respond to a face than it is to respond to like the shape of a face with the features scrambled on it. And even when we just see two eyes and a mouth in some form, you know, like a smiley face, when we see like an outlet, all kinds of things, we just are very, very quick to associate it into a face. So we see faces quickly, and then there's also a part of our brain that decides pretty quickly, like, if the face is close enough to human for us to expect there to be a mind. So when something looks, you know, like a human, then we think, okay, there should be thought behind that. There should be, like, intention. And when something doesn't, then we, even if we associate it as a face, we might not think that there's, of course, like a mind going on behind that. So from what I was reading, I was talking about how when we get really creeped out, it's because something is realistic enough to pass this threshold in our minds to where there should be a mind behind it. Which I think is really interesting with the Pascualita, because it kind of satisfies that same idea, right? Like someone was looking at this mannequin and was looking at it long enough, and because, like, you know, the hands have like little veins and wrinkles and stuff, like some kind of threshold was passed and they were like, this is creepy, like maybe this is a corpse. Or, you know, you just get that feeling of like, what if this thing actually did come to life, or like was looking at me through those eyes, or whatever, you know? So I just thought that was a very interesting aspect to the theory that I hadn't seen as much, is like that some of the creepiness comes from the sense that there could be, that like when we passed a certain threshold, that we would expect like consciousness there, I guess.
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely hadn't heard that as part of the Uncanny Valley theory. Makes total sense to me, though. I mean, listen, not to make a joke, but there are a lot of people who you see, and you'd expect consciousness. You know, you'd expect intelligent thought, you'd expect comprehension, and it doesn't happen. And that's T.
And that is
so,
T. Thank you. Yeah. No, I completely agree. Oh, and I was thinking of something related to that. The thought is gone. She's gone. It's okay. I was too skinny.
See, it just happened to you. It just happened to you. Thought gone.
It's so true. Oh, I think that's where also the idea of like statues coming to life really creeps us out. Like, have you seen that Doctor Who episode with the angel statues?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a standout one because it is so creepy. Like walking around with the sense that things are moving without really being able to tell. And I think that part of that is that, like, you know, by all appearances, this thing shouldn't have a mind. Oh, that was part of the disconnect too that they mentioned. Like, your mind knows that it shouldn't have a mind or like consciousness, but some part of your brain wants to think that it does when it's like really lifelike, you know.
Right.
So that disconnect really creeps us out too. And another thing that was interesting was when there's a disconnect in facial expressions that creeps us out. So a doll that has like angry eyes but is smiling, or like other disconnects in facial expressions really kind of freak us out. So yeah, I just think that the statues episode really epitomizes that of like these shouldn't be moving. I know that they're not, but like I get this weird feeling that they are because they look weird, and like I think I see them looking at me. That whole sort of feel of unease.
Right. Have you ever heard of SCP-173?
No.
Have you ever heard of SCPs in general?
Mm-mm.
So I'm not gonna do an episode on. We're not gonna do an episode on this just because like, they're kind of like creepypasta, but I don't think they're like as interesting. But it is. Well, who knows? Maybe I'll swallow my words. You never know. Basically, SCPs are a subgenre of creepypasta. there's this fictional organization called the SCP Foundation, and they basically, people write stories of like SCP-2 or SCP-35 or SCP-300, and each SCP is a creature, right? It's a fictional creature that this foundation has allegedly captured and is keeping in its premises in order to protect the world from this creature. And it's literally just creepypastas. It's just this concept that people came up with, and it's really creative. And the first SCP story ever made was like from 2009 on like a 4chan board, on like a post, and it's from it's SCP-173, and it's this like statue made of concrete and rebar and spray paint, and or at least that's what the picture they use for the fake story looks like. It just looks like this big statue in the corner of a room, and it looks kind of creepy. I'll send you a link, and you can tell that like the person that wrote this, especially because this post was first made right after the Doctor Who episode had come out, you can tell they were inspired by that episode. And so I was just wondering if you'd ever heard of this.
No.
It's really popular now.
Oh, interesting. I like that. I'll check it out.
Yeah, so I'll send you a link. You can check it out later, but girl, give me your La Llorona story.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is give you the end of it, because, okay, wait. First of all, this story is incredible. You know who the main character of this story is, Andre?
No.
A horror podcaster.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, that was our episode. Thank you, everyone.
Wait, literally, it's so spot on. So, the main character here has this persona, Pewter, that they use, in, like, their podcasting, and, like, they make videos and stuff, and it's all about, like, basically what we do. It is 100% what we do. And so they tell this story about how they moved close to a cemetery, which was really nice. And they were having a stream in the cemetery. And so while streaming in the cemetery, I'll just like read some snippets that are really good. So
I would never stream in a cemetery, though. I'm not that dumb. That's something Shannon would do, but I wouldn't do that.
I think I would, but okay. Over 500 people were watching as soon as I started. The number would continue to grow over the course of the stream, often topping off with a couple thousand by the end. As I'd predicted, most questions right off the bat were about living next to the graveyard. "See anything spoopy yet?" someone typed. I put on an exaggerated frown and wagged my finger at the screen. "Have some respect for the dearly departed," I said. "Come, let's say hello to the neighbors. I'll show you have nothing to be afraid of." I plucked the camera off the top of the monitor and brought it with me to the window. I panned it around, long and slow, to give them a good view of the grounds. I paused only when I realized that there was a woman in the shot. She was far across the cemetery, barely visible in the fading evening sunlight, really. But I quickly pointed the camera away from her. I didn't want to put some poor mourning woman on the internet for people to gawk at. If anyone else had seen her, no one commented, and I moved the camera back to the monitor and resumed straightening up my bookshelf. The next evening, while I was editing a video to upload it to my site, I leaned back in my chair to stretch. My gaze drifted to the open window, and I let my tired eyes wander a bit to give them a break from the glare of the computer screen. It was just shy of nightfall, and the crickets were chirping loudly from the bushes. In the distance, a woman was moving between headstones. Her gait was awkward, a slow limp, and each step looked pained. Her face was washed out in shadow. I watched her for a moment, but it felt voyeuristic and wrong to stare, so I rubbed my eyes and got back to work. Apparently, I discovered the downside of my new home next to a cemetery, feeling like a creep just for looking out my window. I took the next night off and went out with a few friends for beers and a movie. On the way home, driving past the cemetery at twilight, a flash of color caught my eye. The white dress of a woman standing in front of a grave, partially obscured by a tree. By then, there was a familiar quality to her. The dark hair, all piled in a mess of tangled curls, the stooped posture. I was sure it was the same woman I'd seen the previous 2 nights. Only now, she was closer to my house. Maybe she has friends and family spread around, I thought to myself. Or maybe she was just someone who liked evening walks. There were half a dozen perfectly reasonable explanations for her being there, and I didn't think much of her except that she might give Pewter, that's their, podcast persona, an embellished tale to tell. When I recorded the following morning, I started with a home update and included a little quip about the cemetery's wandering woman. I named her Betsy and said we were becoming fast friends. It didn't take long for fan art of Betsy to start popping up. She was often portrayed as young and beautiful, always in white, a stark contrast to the character Pewter. Along with the art came the suggestions. Research your house. You should look into her. Maybe she's like La Llorona. If this is real, you need to do an episode about it. I admit it did get me thinking. And when I saw the woman I dubbed Betsy again that night, it didn't seem like such a bad idea at all. She was in the middle of the cemetery then, closer than I'd ever seen her, still creeping along in her slow, teetering manner. I thought I might have heard the faintest note of humming carried on the breeze. She came to an unsteady halt and started to lift her head from its bowed position. Before we could make eye contact, I shut the window and let the curtain fall over it. It was bad enough I was going to use her as episode fodder. I didn't want her to catch me watching her. I shot an email to Guy, that's their partner, who handled a lot of research for the show, and asked him to look up anything interesting related to my house and the cemetery beside it before going to the living room to watch TV. A tiny feeling of guilt was nibbling at the back of my mind. I knew I hadn't violated Betsy's privacy or revealed anything about her, but I couldn't help but wonder if I was still exploiting her in a way. I shook the sensation away. Betsy would likely never hear my podcast, and if she did, she wouldn't know that she was the inspiration for my Properties History episode. It was harmless. As I tried to fall asleep that night, I was certain that every so often I'd catch just a second's worth of a woman humming somewhere outside. Guy got back to me quickly. I had an email from him by dinner at the same time next day. You must live next to the most boring cemetery ever, he'd written. Only interesting thing I could find was that there was some brief scandal where the groundskeeper ran off with a widow after his wife disappeared like 40 years ago. Other than that, house was owned by the church that used to own the cemetery, and then the city bought them out. They fixed up the house, now you're in it. Gonna need more than that if you want to make an episode out of it. He wasn't wrong, but I also didn't think he was totally right. The bit about the groundskeeper caught my attention, and I decided to look into it more myself. So we see more of a story here about the groundskeeper and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then, out of what was becoming habit, I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. Betsy was there again in the same white dress. She was just on the other side of the iron fence that separated my yard from the cemetery. One of her hands loosely gripped one of the posts, and she was staring up at me. Usually I would have looked away immediately, embarrassed that I'd been caught peering out my window at her, but I froze in place. There was something off about Betsy, and the longer I stared at her, the more aware of it I became. It started with her hand, the one holding the fence, her fingertips. Even in the deepening dark, they stood out against her pale skin. They were bloody and raw. Her nails were jagged in some places, completely torn away in others. Now that she was closer, I could see the streaks and stains of dirt that lined her dress, the tears in her skirt and bodice, the flecks of red that dotted the white. She had started to pace, limping along the fence line in that stooped, unsteady way. The source of it was clear now. With every step she took, her skirt raised slightly, and I could see her bare feet, one of which was twisted entirely around. I yelped in surprise, and in fright, she stopped, again turning to look up at me. This time, I met her gaze. 2 black holes, where her eyes should have been, fixed on me. She started to open her mouth, but I slammed the window shut and yanked the curtains over it. My heart hammered in my chest, and I could barely remember to breathe. Had I just seen a woman in desperate need of help? Or something else? I didn't know. I couldn't make sense of it. With my own breathing roaring in my ears, I dug around on my desk for my cell phone. I wasn't sure if I was going to call Guy or another friend or the cops. I just knew I needed to call someone. After an anxious, frantic moment, I remembered I'd left it charging down in the kitchen. Big mistake, Pewter. I tore down the steps 2 or 3 at a time and launched myself from the final one into the hall. I stumbled, almost tripped, and righted myself against the wall before scrambling into the kitchen. My phone was sitting on the counter, plugged into a cord beside my keys. As I reached for it, a floorboard on the back porch groaned. A rasping, dry woman's voice followed it. The handle on the door turned sharply, and it was pushed inward. She was dragging herself in through the door, one hand with its bloodied, ruined fingertips stretched out towards me. Her skin was thin, papery. Her empty socket stared endlessly at me. I screamed and grabbed my keys. My phone was forgotten. I spun on my heel and ran through my house to the front door. Her voice raised to a screech. I could hear her thumping down the hallway after me, her footsteps heavy and uneven. But I was already halfway across the front lawn. I jumped into my car and slammed the door shut. She was in the entryway of the house, her hands clenching the door frame on either side. I threw the car in reverse and pressed hard on the gas. Her shriek followed me down the drive. Okay. And then they run away and sell the house.
Um. Wait, where'd you get this story? Where'd you get this
I
story?
got this story also from No Sleep, the subreddit.
I like the story. It sounds too fake.
Mm.
Um, but it is, well, yeah, no, it is creepy. It's just it feels like I'm reading it off of like scary stories to tell in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people on No Sleep sometimes like really feel like I am truly a writer at heart and they like go above and beyond. But I feel like that sometimes takes away from a story because I feel like the creepier stories are the ones that feel like, oh my god, like it's just a real person telling it. But regardless, spooky. You know, I feel bad for the guy that he had to experience that, and also I'm surprised he got such good reception at a cemetery. You wouldn't think you would, but he did. And yeah, don't mess with La Llorona, kids.
Please.
Thank you for that.
You're so welcome.
Sorry if I'm a downer. It's not your fault that the story is kind of a flop. Hi Flop, say hi to Flop. So anyway.
All right, R.I.P. story.
um Thank you for listening, everyone. If you like this episode, please do let us know by giving us 2 thumbs up our asses. And also, if you have topic ideas for future episodes, do let us know by DMing us on Facebook at, what are we? Who knows? On Twitter and Instagram at Talk Scary, and on Facebook at Scary Talk. There we go. And that's it. Anything else, honey?
No, thank y'all.
Alrighty. Don't mess with La Llorona. Don't mess with Ouija boards. Be scared of the Mothman. In Paris Hilton's words, stop being poor. So, good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.